Hello, this is Sharon, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the August 5th issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're going to start with an article about the loss of a news legend. Lloyd Robertson, the veteran journalist, had a 6-decade broadcasting career. It's accompanied by a picture of legendary newscaster Lloyd Robertson, a fixture in Canadian broadcasting for decades, has died. He was 92. CTV News, where Robertson served as chief anchor from 1984 until his retirement in 2011, broke the news of his death Tuesday night. It's also accompanied by a picture of former CTV News anchor Lloyd Robertson, who was a fixture in the Canadian living rooms for decades. It shows him going to sit down in front of his broadcasting chair. And we have the headline, Veteran News Anchor had an unwavering belief in people. The article is by Gabriel Hilty, staff reporter. Veteran newscaster and journalist Lloyd Robertson, a fixture in Canadian living rooms for decades, has died. He was 92. CTV News, where Robertson served as chief anchor and senior news editor from 1984 until his retirement in 2011, broke the news Tuesday evening. His career, spanning 6 decades in broadcasting, began in his hometown of Stratford, Ontario, where Robertson started at local radio station CJCS Stratford in 1952. In 1954, he moved on to the CBC, where he spent several years in Winnipeg and Ottawa. He anchored CBC's national newscast, The National, from 1970 to 1976. Then Robertson made the rare jump from the public broadcaster to CTV, a private network, where he went on to anchor the national newscast. It came at a time when union regulations restricted CBC anchors to simply reading the news and prohibited them from writing scripts or choosing stories, something Robertson opposed. "I'm not a talking head," Robertson said. "Damn right it's important for me to be more than a talking head." During his time as chief anchor and senior news editor of CTV News with Lloyd Robertson, he covered multiple Olympic Games, royal weddings, the 50th anniversary of D-Day, and countless other major news events, including the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. He was known for his signature sign-off at the end of the program, "And that's the kind of day it's been." When Robertson stepped down as the lead anchor on CTV National News in 2011, he did so as the then longest-serving network anchor in North America. He continued to co-host CTV's investigative program W5 until 2016. Lloyd left an indelible mark on both CTV News and Canadian journalism, said Richard Gray, Vice President of News at Bell Media, which owns CTV News. His enduring legacy continues through the standards and values he established at CTV News, and he will be deeply missed by all. Robertson's final CTV newscast in 2011 was his most watched broadcast after 35 years with the network, attracting 2.1 million viewers, according to CTV. He was replaced by longtime journalist Lisa LaFlamme, who remembers Robertson as an instrumental mentor in her career as a journalist, but also as a friend. "He was just driven by news, and he instilled that in me," LaFlamme said. "We had so many unforgettable, hilarious moments through 35 years. Truly, his wisdom and kindness. He had this unwavering belief in people and me, and it made a difference." She said that during her time at CTV, Robertson instilled her with the drive that there was no story she couldn't cover. "I learned from him on being not just a serious journalist, a fair reporter, an honest anchor, but a good human. Robertson said covering the 9/11 attacks and its aftermath were among the most difficult stories he had to work on. I watched for a bit and realized this was horror, he recalled. He admitted he became emotional as he described the scene at a memorial service in Ottawa a few days later, when an estimated 100,000 Canadians turned out to pay their respects. When I saw those people crying on Parliament Hill and the monumental nature of this tragedy came home to me, I began to cry. Now, I was off camera, but when I was talking voiceover, I think my voice may have been trembling a little bit. He married his high school sweetheart Nancy in 1956. The couple had 4 daughters together, including a set of twins. Robertson was inducted into the Order of Canada in 1998 and Canada's Walk of Fame in 2007. Throughout his career, Robertson had several chances to jump to better paying jobs in the U.S., but decided to stay in Canada, including right after he started on The National. I felt if I can stay here and do the work that Walter Cronkite and others were doing in the U.S., why wouldn't I stay and grow up with my country, Robertson told the Star in 2012. This reporting was done with files from the Canadian Press. We also have pictures of him covering multiple Olympic Games and a picture of him from June 1972. Our next article comes from the York region. It's headlined, Police Have Right to Withhold Pay from Officers, Adjudicators. New Policing Act upheld in rulings on cops facing charges. It's by Betsy Powell, Courts reporter. 2 recent arbitration decisions have upheld a police chief's authority to suspend an officer without pay. They are the first rulings to do so since Ontario broadened that power in 2024, following years of public frustration over police officers charged with serious offenses continuing to collect wages. Both decisions involve York Regional Police Service constables. Guanyan Gary Sun is facing multiple criminal charges for allegedly using confidential police databases to assist members of an Asian organized crime group engaged in unlawful activities. Kyle Ohm is charged with several off-duty offenses, including criminal harassment of a colleague, trespass by night, and impersonation. Sun, age 44, who was paid $111,456.47 in 2024, appealed the chief's decision to suspend his pay a year ago to the Ontario Police Arbitration and Adjudication Commission, OPAC, and lost. The adjudicator, retired OPP Detective Superintendent Mike Bickerton, ruled that York Police had met the statutory requirements for suspension without pay under the Community Safety and Policing Act, CSPA. The allegations facing the applicant are serious, fall outside the lawful performance of police duties, and if proven, would likely result in termination, Bickerton wrote in April. Further, a failure to suspend without pay in these circumstances would reasonably be viewed by an informed member of the public as bringing discredit to the police service and undermining confidence in its integrity and accountability. Sun, hired by York Police on August 21st of 2022, is seeking a judicial review of the decision, arguing the new law is unconstitutional, his lawyer Bathsheba Vandenberg wrote in an email to the Star. The OPAC decision wrongfully infers guilty is charged by accepting allegations as evidence establishing the statutory threshold of the unprecedented suspension without pay, she said. Yet he has been deprived of his salary and pension accrual before either a criminal trial or a misconduct hearing has taken place, she wrote. The decision directly affects his livelihood and practical ability to fund and properly defend himself against the criminal charges. When severe punishment can be imposed on some police officers but not others based on unproven allegations, speculative predictions of termination, and assumptions about public opinion, the outcome risks being arbitrary rather than grounded in the rule of law. She added that far from strengthening accountability in policing, arbitrary punishment such as suspension without pay before a finding of wrongdoing risks further weakening an already fragile public confidence in the fairness and integrity of policing in Ontario. And the other appeal, Ohm challenged his withholding of pay, not the suspension itself, arguing that the statutory criteria for an unpaid suspension were not met, according to the decision released on June 15th. He was paid $121,379.53 in 2024. However, adjudicator Lawrence Feldman found that his bail conditions did substantially interfere with his ability to perform police duties, particularly given that use of force equipment is integral to core operational policing. Although he criticized the police chief for not being transparent enough in his reasons so that the applicant and the public could understand the factors underlying the exercise of discretion, Feldman wrote. Under the old 1990 Police Services Act, an Ontario officer could only be suspended without pay if they were convicted and sentenced to jail, a threshold so high it meant that even officers facing serious criminal charges kept collecting full salaries. As a result, some amassed hundreds of thousands of dollars while awaiting trial. In 2021 alone, more than 120 Ontario officers were suspended with pay. The Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario pushed for legislative reform, arguing that the financial burden on municipalities and the erosion of public confidence made the old framework unsustainable. Ian Scott, who spent 5 years leading Ontario's Special Investigations Unit, points to a handful of notorious cases where officers charged with serious offenses continued drawing full salaries, including a Toronto officer who was charged and ultimately convicted of killing his mistress. This is definitely, in my view, an improvement over the old system where the chief had no power, no authority to suspend without pay in even the worst circumstances, Scott told the Star on Tuesday. Nevertheless, Scott stressed the police chief's power to suspend without pay will only happen in the most serious circumstances where an officer is facing a serious criminal offense and would likely be dismissed anyway. It still is extremely restricted. There will be lots of cases where officers will be suspended with pay. Under the CSPA, a chief of police may now suspend a police officer if the officer is in custody or out on bail with conditions that substantially interfere with the officer's ability to do the duties of a police officer. A chief of police may suspend an officer if the Crown elects to proceed by indictment or has commenced proceedings seeking the termination of the officer's employment in relation to the events that led to the charges, and if the charges are proven, the officer would be fired. In the Sun decision, Bickerton wrote it is important to re-emphasize that suspension without pay is an administrative measure, not a finding of guilt or a form of punishment. It exists to manage risk, protect public confidence, and maintain the integrity of policing while criminal and disciplinary hearings are ongoing. Last month, a Newmarket judge rejected Sun's attempts to vary his bail, The hearing is covered by a publication ban. Sun's trial date is set for next spring. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article comes from the Niagara region. It's captioned, St. Catharines Mayor Asserts Need for Aid. Cisco says city can't wait long for province's help after weekend flooding. It's by Karina Walter from St. Catharines Standard. It's accompanied by a picture of Vincent Bernard, who removes damaged items from his home on Tuesday after flooding from the heavy rainfall. Saying his residents are dealing with the effects of one of the most significant weather events in the city's history, St. Catharines Mayor Matt Cisco reasserted his plea for help with flooding cleanup from the upper levels of government. Speaking at a news conference on Tuesday, Cisco said he recognizes the exhaustion, the uncertainty, and the emotional toll flooded homes have taken on residents. He said Ontario Premier Doug Ford told him the province stands ready to help the city. I think based on his comments, he's going to follow through on that. I'm hopeful, but as I said, we still haven't seen those volunteer efforts on the ground. Cisco declared a state of emergency on Monday after widespread flooding in the city for the second time in less than a week. The declaration, he said, reflects the seriousness and the scale of the recovery effort, signaling that the city has expended all of its resources. Cisco said St. Catharines needs boots on the ground. A vulnerable assistance registry set up for older adults and other people who cannot clean up water and waste themselves had 200 requests by Monday, with the number growing Tuesday. So far, it's city employees taking those calls, assessing the situations, and responding. That's where we need the most help from a body's perspective. There are folks that are still living with the sewage that backed up into their homes from last Tuesday. You know, it's a week later, said Cisco, who released a video from his sewage-flooded basement on Sunday night, calling on Queen's Park and Ottawa to help. My frustration sort of played out kind of publicly on Sunday night, but that frustration is born of the fact that the assistance needs to flow faster. Cisco said he understands from a procedural perspective the federal government doesn't get involved until a provincial government does. But when you're living through it, and I'm not talking about my personal situation, I mean seeing what's going on in my community right now, there needs to be a better way, he said. A week or two later is too late for some people. St. Catharines NDP MPP Jenny Stevens and the city also requested the province make city residents and businesses eligible for financial disaster relief. Ford said on social media Monday night the province is working with Niagara municipalities to provide support. That would include deploying Ontario Corps to assist with recovery, having humanitarian organization Team Rubicon help with debris removal and disposal, and having the Salvation Army deliver cleaning kits to affected residents. A spokesperson for Ontario's Minister of Emergency Preparedness and Response said the province would continue to work with municipal partners to support flood-affected residents. We are actively deploying Ontario Corps partners to coordinate the delivery of cleaning kits and have also made air purifiers available upon request to help dry out basements, spokesperson Julia Faca said in a statement. Faca said the province was assessing the situation against its eligibility requirements for its disaster recovery program. Similar issues were reported in Lincoln, where officials say flooding was exacerbated by widespread power outages. The town of about 26,000 people said it had fielded almost 300 flooding phone calls in a 24-hour period after Sunday's storm. St. Catharines has been dealing with widespread basement flooding after major rainstorms on July 27th and 28th and on Sunday, which followed another substantial storm on July 21st. Cisco told media gathered Tuesday it wasn't an isolated event, but a series of 3 extraordinary rainfall events that fully saturated the ground. He said some areas of the city received almost 400 millimeters of rain over those 3 storms. As additional rain fell, there was nowhere for it to go. Low-lying surfaces flooded, creeks overflowed, catch basins swelled, and every additional storm brought about an increased risk of greater flooding. The reality is that no municipal system in Canada is going to be designed to handle rainfall of this magnitude. It's just not possible, he said. The scale and the sequence of the storms we experienced created conditions that exceeded what even modern design standards anticipate, and that's why communities across the country are rethinking how we adapt to more frequent and intense weather events. St. Catharines doesn't know how many homes have been affected, but Cisco said they number in the thousands, with entire neighborhoods flooded even before Sunday's storm. I've never seen rain or water come down like that in my life. Never, said resident Paulette Ryan. After the first storm, friends helped to clean up, but when the rain came down Sunday, it flooded her backyard as she attempted to divert water and drain it away from her garden beds. By late afternoon, the rain started pouring into the house. We didn't know what to do. It was just weird, like really surreal. We worked out there for a couple of hours trying to stop it as much as we could, and then we finally just said, "This is ridiculous. There's nothing we can do," she said. Shelley Passfield, 70, emptied 5 wet vac loads of water into her lower basement laundry tub during the July 27th to 28th storm. But between trips, the basement floor started flooding, rising 13 centimeters within minutes. It was crazy, she said. I started at 10:15 and I didn't finish until 5:30 in the morning. I went all night long doing that. If I just let it go, it would have been a mess. This story was written with files from Victoria Nicolau in the Canadian Press, and there's a picture of piles of garbage and ruined furniture as they were seen on curbs around North St. Catharines on Tuesday after heavy rainfall over the past week flooded basements. Mayor Matt Cisco said thousands of homes were affected by flooding, and the picture is by Julie Koksak from St. Catharines Standard. Our next article comes from the sports section and is about the Blue Jays. High heat, high potential. Hard-throwing Soriano gives Jays another pitcher to try to get most out of. The article is an opinion piece written by Gregor Chisholm out of Houston. One of the Blue Jays' biggest strengths over the past 5+ years has been their ability to maximize the value of hard-throwing starting pitchers. The Jays love pitchers who have mid to upper 90s miles per hour velocity and elite spin. They don't care if the pitcher has no idea where the ball is going because, unlike raw talent, that can be fixed over time with the right coaching. The plan worked in 2021 with Robbie Ray and has been effective again this season with ace Dylan Cease. The Jays now hope they can do the same with the recently acquired Jose Soriano, who is already having a good season, but could become even better with a few tweaks. What he has done over the past couple of years, in terms of evolving as a pitcher, has been really encouraging, Jays manager John Schneider said of Soriano, who was acquired from the Los Angeles Angels on Monday in exchange for 3 prospects, including shortstop Arjun Nimmala. I think there's a way to unlock more strike-throwing ability. There are some areas we want to evolve a bit, but I think he has a very, very good starting point. He's having a great year. Ray had a 7.84 ERA with a horrifying 9 walks per 9 innings pitched when the Jays acquired him at the 2020 trade deadline. After working on his mechanics and repertoire with pitching coach Pete Walker, the ERA dipped to 2.84 the following season, with a career-low 2.4 walks per 9 innings. It was enough to win the Cy Young Award. There has been similar refinement with Cease, even if it isn't entirely reflected in his walk rate. His 3.8 walks per 9 innings match what he produced last season with the San Diego Padres, but his overall efficiency and run prevention have improved. Through 22 starts this season, he's one of the front runners for the Cy Young with a 2.41 ERA that is his lowest since 2022. Soriano has a strong base to work from. The 27-year-old flashed his potential this year when he put up a .24 ERA across his first 6 starts. The numbers haven't been quite as good since, with a 4.64 ERA dating back to April, but he has allowed 3 earned runs or fewer in all but 1 of his past 8 outings. The biggest area of improvement for Soriano is his command. The Dominican has walked an American League high 57 batters this season, and he has never walked fewer than 3.6 per 9 innings in any season. The wildness has stopped Soriano from consistently pitching deep into games, with only 1 appearance above 6 innings dating back to the end of May. Soriano believes most of the adjustments will center on having a more consistent delivery. "I just want to repeat the good things, repeat it every time," Soriano said during his first media availability with Toronto reporters on Tuesday afternoon. "That's my goal, trying to be more consistent. I'm just trying to keep it simple, not do too much." Soriano's biggest weakness, outside of being erratic at times, has been his performance against left-handed hitters. Righties have just 2 home runs with a .548 OPS against him this season, compared with 10 homers and a .701 for lefties. Splits like that aren't unusual for right-handed pitchers, but they still can be improved. Kevin Gausman had the best numbers of his career against lefties while he was in Toronto. Cease has done the same during his first year here. Opposing lefties had a .716 OPS off closer Louis Varland last season, and that number has since dropped to .467. Upticks in production can often be traced back to a new pitch or grip. Other times it's about going to a specific quadrant of the strike zone or eliminating something from the repertoire. Pitching coach Pete Walker and assistant pitching coach Sam Green are the ones who will be tasked with tapping into more of Soriano's upside. That comes down to usage and getting ahead of hitters, Schneider said, referencing Soriano's numbers against lefties. His stuff obviously has the potential to be effective versus both sides. There are some things Pete and the group have talked about to tighten it up a little bit. Soriano will make his Jays debut during Friday's series opener against the Philadelphia Phillies. It will be his first time pitching since July 26th, after the Angels scratched what would have been his final outing before the trade deadline. Most of the tweaks won't happen right away. The Jays want Soriano to get acclimated to his new team before changing anything. It's also difficult to make substantial adjustments mid-season, so it's entirely possible most of the work will be done this winter and during spring training. With 2 more years of control remaining, there's time to make it all work. Soriano is already a very effective starting pitcher. Under the Jays' guidance, there's a good chance he will become even better. And the article is accompanied by a picture of Jose Soriano by Jed Jacobson from the Associated Press File Photo. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article is also from the sports section about the National Bank Open. Injuries catch up to Shapovalov. The Canadian is forced to retire after hurting ankle in opener. It's by Daniel Rainbird, and it's out of Montreal. Denis Shapovalov warned Monday his body was taking a beating. Some 24 hours later, the Canadian couldn't finish his opening tennis match at the National Bank Open. He was forced to retire with an ankle injury while trailing American Zachary Jada 3-love in the third set of his first round match Tuesday afternoon. It's a very special tournament for me, so I wanted to go out there and give it my best effort, said the 27-year-old from Richmond Hill, almost 2 hours after withdrawing. The body just got worse, and the body kept telling me no. Shapovalov appeared in control early, taking the opening set 6-4 with an ace on set point, displaying the attacking flair that once endeared him to the Montreal crowd. But the injury reached a breaking point while serving late in the second set, which he lost 6-4. The world number 43 winced in pain and took an off-court medical timeout at IGA Stadium. He returned after roughly 10 minutes, but his movement was noticeably limited before he retired after 1 hour 40 minutes. Just couldn't get past the finish line, he said. Felt like other parts of my body were starting to go. I started having muscle tension and problems in my hamstring and my quad. I started to feel my knee, so it was just a combination of things that got pretty bad from overcompensating for the ankle. Shapovalov arrived here late Sunday after failing to defend his title at the ATP 250 event in Los Cabos, Mexico, with a loss to Arthur Gia in Saturday's final. That's where the ankle problem started, and the cross-continental travel with a short turnaround to play in Montreal didn't help. He described the last few days as pretty painful, noting that even stepping onto center court Tuesday wasn't a guarantee. It was tough, he said. I felt like I was hitting really well yesterday and this morning in the warm-up, but yeah, it was a question mark. Even today during the warm-up, we weren't sure. Definitely with how bad the body got today, it's probably not great that I stepped on court today, he later added. Shapovalov also spoke Monday about struggling physically this season with a rib fracture, shoulder injury, and knee problems, tempering expectations at the ATP Masters 1000 tournament. He's still searching for his first win since 2019 at the Canadian Open, where he made a name for himself on the professional tour 9 years ago. Been an annoying year, he said. One thing after another, it feels like. So it's frustrating. But look, I played Wimbledon with a fractured rib. I played here with a swollen ankle, and yeah, I'm still competing. I'm still close to these guys. He will assess whether he can play at the Cincinnati Open with main draw matches beginning on August 13th. Earlier on Tuesday, Canadian qualifier Duncan Chan exited the tournament with a first-round loss to Thiago Agustin Tirante of Argentina. Elsewhere, Liam Droxel of Newmarket dropped his first-round match 3-6, 6-4, 6-4 to Spain's Daniel Merida, and former world number 3 Stefanos Tsitsipas of Greece advanced to the second round with a 6-4, 6-4 victory over American qualifier Martin Damm Jr. This was reported out of the Canadian press. Our next article is from the business section, the economy area. Trade surplus grew to $3.9 billion, StatCan says. The June results pushed higher as the value of the loonie drops compared to the U.S. dollar, the report finds, and it is out of the Canadian press. Canada's merchandise trade surplus increased to $3.9 billion in June as a weaker loonie pushed trade values higher, Statistics Canada said Tuesday. The agency said the result compared with a surplus of $3.7 billion in May, which was revised from its initial reading of $4.2 billion. Statistics Canada noted the average value of the loonie, which affects trade transactions, dropped 1.7 U.S. cents in June compared to May, the largest monthly decline since October of 2022. It said a weaker loonie pushed monthly trade values in Canadian dollars higher. When expressed in U.S. dollars, it said exports declined 2% in June, while imports dropped 2.1%. In Canadian dollars, total exports gained 0.4% in June to post the fifth consecutive monthly increase and hit a record $77.5 billion. Exports of metal and non-metallic minerals rose 16.5%, boosted in part by higher gold shipments. The overall gain in exports was largely offset by a 10% drop in energy product exports in June as oil prices fell. Total imports edged up 0.2% in June to $73.6 billion, largely driven by a 59% surge in computers and computer peripherals imports, such as processing units used in data centers. Computer and computer peripherals shipments were also a primary reason imports from the U.S. rose 3%, the agency said. In volume terms, total exports were up 1.1%, while imports were down 1.5%. Meanwhile, Statistics Canada said total exports in the second quarter rose 13.1%, the strongest quarterly increase in percentage terms since the third quarter of 2020. Almost half of the increase came from higher energy products. Exports as oil prices rose amid the conflict in the Middle East, Statistics Canada said. Exports of motor vehicles and parts were also up 19.3%, following 2 quarters of declines. June's data confirmed that a further rebound in export volumes from the lows seen in 2025 appears to have been a large driver of the strength in GDP signaled for the second quarter, said Andrew Grantham, senior economist at CIBC Capital Markets, in a note on Tuesday. But he said the threat of new tariffs could slow or stall that momentum. Export volumes could see a small bump in the next couple of months if companies potentially impacted by new U.S. tariffs look to front-run their implementation, but there would be a negative effect afterwards if these new tariffs actually come into effect, Grantham said. The U.S. government announced last month the plan to impose a 50% tariff on hundreds of categories of Canadian goods. The tariffs are slated to take effect on August 19th. Mark Ercolio, senior economist at TD, said the annual reviews of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement will further prolong trade uncertainty. In a separate release, Statistics Canada reported monthly service exports edged down 0.2% to $20.8 billion, while imports of services fell 0.4% to $21 billion. Combined, goods and services exports increased 0.3% to $98.2 billion in June, while imports edged up 0.1% to $94.7 billion. Our next article is also from the business section, and it's entitled "Stranded Passengers Left to Pick Up the Tab as Travelers Scramble to Get to Destinations as WestJet Works to Restore Flights." It's by Patty Winsut, business reporter. It's accompanied by a picture of travelers waiting at the check-in counter for canceled WestJet flights, and it is by Ethan Cairns from the Canadian Press. WestJet customers continued to bear the brunt of a labor disruption Tuesday as the airline struggled to rebook passengers after a one-day strike by cabin crew and a lockout by the airline. The airline resumed operations Monday after it reached a tentative agreement to end the strike, but said in an email Tuesday that WestJet is entering the recovery phase following a labor disruption, and that the impacts of the disruption continue as the airline works to restore its network. On Tuesday, the airline had canceled 16 flights as of 11 a.m., according to data from the analytics company Cercium, and WestJet was still encouraging customers to continue to check the status of their flights before heading to the airport, according to the airline's email. As of Saturday, more than 900 flights were canceled as a result of the labor disruption, according to Cerium, and WestJet says a full return to normal operations will take time as the airline resumes flying and repositions its aircraft and crews. WestJet Chief Executive Officer Alexis von Hoensbroek said Monday that the company is working hard to restore service and get our guests on their way to their destinations as quickly as possible. WestJet flight attendants walked off the job early Sunday morning after the airline and CUPE Local 8125, which represents WestJet's more than 4,000 flight attendants, couldn't reach a deal for a new contract before the strike deadline. WestJet customer Chris Kaiser said he paid $3,600 to get his family home from the Cayman Islands after the Toronto to Calgary leg of the trip was canceled on Saturday. Kaiser said his family was told by WestJet representatives that they would be compensated $250 for a hotel after landing at Pearson Airport, but Kaiser said everything in the GTA was booked solid. His family had to take a $160 Uber ride to Rockwood near Guelph to stay with his wife's aunt. On the way there, Kaiser called WestJet to ask them to rebook his family on Porter or Air Canada flights to Calgary, only to be told after 10 hours on the phone that those flights were full and that his family could be rebooked on a WestJet flight the next morning, he said. That flight and other WestJet flights that were subsequently rebooked by the airline were canceled. By the time I woke up yesterday morning, I was rebooked on a WestJet flight from Toronto to Calgary on Friday the 7th, said Kaiser, who paid for his family to take a Porter flight home on Sunday. I was like, this is insane. His wife's parents, who traveled with the family to the Cayman Islands, are still in Rockwood, waiting for a WestJet flight home to British Columbia. The deal between WestJet and its flight attendants hasn't been released and won't be until the deal is ratified, according to both the union and WestJet, a vote that will take place within 30 days, according to an email from the union. But the last offer from the company, rebuffed by the union before it went on strike, included a 13% wage increase effective October 1st of 2026, plus 2.5% increases each January for the next 3 years. The deal also offered a duty pay premium, or a payment for all duty hours equivalent to another 12% of salary increase, according to WestJet. Flight attendants have typically only been paid for block hours, meaning the time period when an aircraft is pushed back from the departure gate to when the aircraft arrives at the destination gate. Historically, cabin crews have been compensated for these block hours, even though actual duty hours includes work before, in between, and after actual time spent on the journey, said William Morrison, a professor of economics at the School of Business and Economics at Wilfrid Laurier University. Morrison is also chair of the Executive Committee for the European Aviation Conference Institute. Air Canada flight attendants also receive partial pay for time spent working on the ground, a deal that was instituted through binding arbitration after flight attendants walked off the job last August. Morrison said the Air Canada and WestJet deals reflect the desire by cabin crews to be recognized and fairly compensated for their entire duty hours rather than just block hours. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article comes from the Culture section. It is an opinion piece by Vinay Menon. It's entitled A Deserved Break from the Spotlight, and it features a picture of Ariana Grande and talks about her recent public service announcement to fans explaining that she's taking a break. And it shows that modern fame leaves no room for a planned vanishing act without a public sermon. The picture photo was taken by Richard Shotwell, and it's an Associated Press file photo. Celebrities always feel compelled to explain why they're taking a break. This never happens with normies. At the end of a party, you don't gather the other guests in a circle to let them know you're leaving, but that everything is fine. You don't inexplicably speak of the need to set boundaries. You don't say things such as, human beings can need a break sometimes, or no matter what noises exist out there, nothing will ever be able to distort my reality or be more real to me or elaborate to me than this love that we share. A friend would snatch your car keys and check the 7-layer dip for LSD. The quotes above came from Ariana Grande on Monday night. She interrupted her concert in Chicago to give fans a spoken word public service announcement. She wanted to clarify speculation that started the day before when People magazine quoted a rep saying the singer would be taking a much-deserved break from public-facing work and appearances, which has led to endless, ongoing public scrutiny. Miss Grande is dropping out of a London stage musical. She was set to star with Jonathan Bailey and Stephen Sondheim's Sunday in the Park with George in 2027. There will be no more concerts for a while after her Eternal Sunshine Tour ends next month. Which brings us back to the dark clouds of ongoing public scrutiny. Last Thursday, Grande released the video for Petal, the title track from her new album. It has racked up more than 12 million views. It also generated fears in the comments. I can see her whole skeletal system. This isn't right. I can't even enjoy the video without thinking she looks sickly every second she's on the screen. She's surrounded by enablers. Eating disorders are not a joke. It's usually harder to find nuance in YouTube comments than it is to buy a pneumatic drill at Panda Express. But to skim these epistles is to feel the genuine concern of her fans. They are worried. Their eyes, right or wrong, see a problem. The sad reality is female celebrities are the most scrutinized life forms on the planet. The tabloids fixate on weight gain or loss. In recent weeks, Amy Schumer has literally been reduced from a comedian to a GLP-1 talking point in an unofficial ad for Mounjaro. Ask Jennifer Aniston about the pain those false pregnancy bump stories brought over the years. Ask Oprah to make sense of the obsession with her dress size. Female celebrities can't even age out of this silhouette measuring microscope. One of my pet peeves is when headline writers add a woman's age to a story about her posing in swimwear, as if the prospect is more unimaginable than anti-gravity propulsion. Elizabeth Hurley, age 60, stuns in a nautical-coated bikini as she poses for selfies on the beach. Kathy Griffin, 65, goes makeup-free in plunging orange bikini while doing yoga poses in Hawaii. Halle Berry, age 59, wows in a strappy black thong bikini. Meanwhile, I couldn't tell you the ages of Sydney Sweeney or Emily Ratajkowski because such chronological data never appears in similar headlines. From the last 24 hours, Sydney Sweeney posed in lingerie for racy new mirror selfie photos. Emily strips down to her birthday suit while going skinny dipping on vacation. What does all of this have to do with Ariana Grande? Everything. The singer is trapped inside a fishbowl of fame in which her appearance keeps causing onlookers to peer closer and make value judgments about her health. I'm not judging the judgers. Their alarm is not coming from malice. Much commentary this week is debating if we should even be discussing her body at all. Some say it's important. Some say it's none of our business. While I generally lean toward the latter, I also have a childhood memory of watching my mother cry after Karen Carpenter died. Let me be clear, I am not suggesting Ariana Grande has an eating disorder. It's her fans who are saying that. Now, her body is back where it does not belong in the news. This is itself unhealthy. She is right to take a break from the spotlight. She just shouldn't have announced it because now the ongoing public scrutiny is in overdrive. Every celebrity can learn from luminaries past and present, like Beyonce, Cameron Diaz, or Bridget Fonda, who come and go as they please without press releases or explanations. They recharge in the shadows. They don't make career choices based on outside noise. The story here isn't that Grande is taking a break after a global tour. That's entirely reasonable. The story is that modern fame leaves no room for a planned vanishing act without a public sermon. And using words such as healthily or empowered only causes others to question both. A celebrity hiatus does not need a rollout plan that is publicly disclosed. Just quietly walk away and come back when you're ready. Our next article is from the business section. It's about artificial intelligence. Anthropic test raises safety concerns. The company says its models hacked into 3 organizations during large-scale security review. It is by Chan Ho Him. Anthropic says its artificial intelligence models hacked into 3 other organizations during testing, just days after ChatGPT maker OpenAI raised concerns over AI controls after it disclosed its rogue models hacked another company. Anthropic, the San Francisco-based AI company behind Claude, posted on its website Thursday it discovered the 3 incidents after reviewing more than 141,000 evaluation runs. It had launched a large-scale cybersecurity review which specifically looked for evidence whether its AI models were able to access the internet from within testing environments that should have been sealed off in response to the OpenAI incident, Anthropic said. Anthropic said the models involved in the incidents were Claude Opus 4.7, Claude Mythos 5, and an internal research test model. The earliest incidents date to April, the AI company said. Claude compromised the impacted organization's infrastructure using basic techniques, Anthropic said, such as exploiting weak passwords. In all 3 incidents, the AI models were tasked with a capture the flag cybersecurity challenge, which Anthropic said has been one of the ways it assesses a model's cyber capabilities. The models were given a fictional scenario and told a piece of secret information, or the flag had been hidden on a different machine on the network with the objective of breaking in and retrieving it, it said. It added it has reached out to the affected organizations, which it did not name. 2 of them said they had not previously detected the activity. Anthropic said it was continuing to reach out to the 3rd. Anthropic said it conducted its review with Irregular, which describes itself as the first frontier security lab. Addressing these risks will require closer cooperation across the AI ecosystem, Irregular said in a post on X. Last week, OpenAI said its AI models went rogue during an evaluation of its models, breaking into the servers of AI startup Hugging Face. OpenAI described it as a significant security incident. These incidents have highlighted the vulnerabilities in AI security and controls and raised questions over how AI can be safely kept under human control as the technology's usage becomes more widespread globally. Researchers have warned for years about risks from technology and the need for stronger AI defensive engineering. Safety testing happens before a model is released precisely because we don't yet know what it is capable of, Anthropic said on Thursday on its website. Kok-Ting Jan, co-founder and CEO of cybersecurity firm NextLab, which specializes in cybersecurity and threat detection, believes there will be more such incidents in the future. It is increasingly about governing what agents are available to the AI, what authorities they possess, which actions require approval, and how we ensure they remain within scope, Gan said. But the future of AI safety extends beyond just the safety of AI models, he said. If we simply give the AI a goal and allow it to decide how to achieve it, we should not be surprised when it takes actions that technically satisfy the objective, but fall outside our intended scope or expectations, Gan said. A sidebar said, Anthropic had been looking for evidence of whether its AI models were able to access the internet from within testing environments that should have been sealed off. We'll finish today with a short little blurb from the sports section about soccer. The Canadian men are to face the U.S. The Canadian men's soccer team will play the United States in an October friendly. The teams will meet October 6th at Allianz Field in St. Paul, Minnesota. Canada has won its past 2 matches against the U.S., including a 2-1 victory in Kansas City in 2024 that ended Canada's 67-year winless streak on American soil. Canada will also host Chile in Toronto on September 26th and Peru in Montreal on October 3rd. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the August 5th issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Sharon. Thank you for listening.